And sometimes a person tells me, I tell them, I ask, but they still don't do it. The thing is, these requests and these conversations can be different. They can be expressed in different ways. Notice that you listen to some people even when you're watching videos on YouTube, but with others, you just want to turn them off. Why do you listen to one person but want to turn the other off? Why do you actually follow the recommendations of one person but completely ignore another? Although later after the fact, you might remember in hindsight, he did tell me that. My father-in-law, my doctor, told me, Veronica, don't cauterize the erosion, don't cauterize the erosion. Erosion needs to be treated. It shouldn't be cauterized because then you won't be able to give birth naturally. You'll have to have a C-section since your cervix won't open, because when erosion is cauterized, it leaves a scar on the cervix. And a scar, as you know, is connective tissue. It doesn't have elasticity. It doesn't open. That's it. There's a little adhesion there. There's just a very tough scar. It doesn't open. They'll have to cut your cervix if you cauterize it now. Well, what's the point of listening to that? Right? So for some reason we hear one channel, but we're completely deaf to another. So we actually discussed this in our public speaking class, by the way, how to speak so that you are heard. And in this case, it's actually a similar situation. A person can be deaf to the womb, to requests, because, for example, I might feel like I don't have the right to speak. I don't feel like I have a right to my own voice. I sound like I'm speaking from hiding. We've talked a lot about this. How to be heard, what words to use, what tone of voice to use, how to rephrase things, and when is the right time to speak. When someone comes home from work, for example, they're tired, or after they've had sex and eaten, that's when they're in a good mood, and that's when you can say what's important to you. Or you can ask what's important to them. They'll answer, and then they'll kind of open up and at that moment say what's important to you. Because all of this consists of extremely significant things that we tend to devalue and don't realize that, yes, that's why I'm not being heard. Remember, when we talked about victim psychology, we discussed how people don't pay attention to you. For example, no one in the group takes you seriously, because this is made up of many extremely important little things. The most important thing is the little things. The things we don't pay attention to. Your slouching, your overall defeated way of walking, the way you dress, your makeup, your hairstyle, your voice, your tone, how you form your words, which words you choose when you speak, and how you say it. That's it. For example, we were discussing Galia with my close friend Tanya Bulanova, and all these stories she tells them like she's speaking from inside a closet. That is, her monologue doesn't have the right to live and exist. But if we look at why this is happening, she will actually tell you. In psychotherapy, I assure you, she will explain why she wasn't allowed to speak. I always tell my children this, both of them. Both of them complain to me, Mom, why don't you hear me? Why don't you hear me? And I explain to her. I say, sweetie, tell me in a way that I can hear you. Say it like that. Because I tell them that my mom is exactly the same. When I try to tell her something, she starts singing. No matter what word I say, she remembers that word and starts singing some song. I'm talking to her and she's just singing. It's like being in a madhouse, and I realized that to get my mom's attention, I needed to become her close friend, her psychologist, and an actress. So I need to ask her in such a way that it has to be exaggerated, with some bold words, with a bit of a flourish. Add some color to your voice. Say it in a way that I would be heard. And